A Streetcar Named Desire by Tennessee Williams. Tennessee Williams was born in Columbus, Mississippi, and grew up in St. Louis, Missouri. He started writing early and won his first prize, $5, for an essay called "Can a Good Wife Be a Good Sport?" when he was 16. He studied at the University of Missouri and entered writing contests to earn money. After failing his military training in his third year, his father made him quit school and work in a factory. At 24, he had a nervous breakdown, quit his job, and returned to college. He later graduated from the University of Iowa in 1938. In 1939, Williams lived in New Orleans' French Quarter, where he wrote for the Works Progress Administration. He later went to Hollywood to work as a screenwriter. Historical context of A Streetcar Named Desire. During and after World War II, American art was generally hopeful and patriotic, celebrating national pride and victory. However, Marlon Brando's bold and rebellious performance as Stanley in A Streetcar Named Desire inspired the rise of youth rebellion and the rock and roll culture of the 1950s and 1960s. Other books related to A Streetcar Named Desire. Williams' earlier play, The Glass Menagerie, 1945, also focuses on family tensions, memories, and fragile dreams. Blanche Dubois is similar to Amanda Wingfield, a faded Southern belle who lives in her past, and Laura Wingfield, her shy and delicate daughter. Arthur Miller's Death of a Salesman also examines family struggles and the conflict between dreams and reality across generations. Key facts about A Streetcar Named Desire. Full title, A Streetcar Named Desire. When written, 1946 to 1947. Where written, New York, Los Angeles, and New Orleans. When published, Broadway premiere, December 3, 1947. Literary period, dramatic naturalism. Genre, psychological drama. Setting, New Orleans, L.A. Climax, Stanley's rape of Blanche at the end of Scene 10. Antagonist, Stanley Kowalski. Summary of A Streetcar Named Desire. The play takes place in a run-down but lively part of New Orleans in the 1940s. Stanley and Stella Kowalski live in a small apartment in an old building. The stage design shows both the inside and outside of their home at the same time. Blanche Dubois, Stella's sister, arrives from Laurel, Mississippi, saying, "They told me to take a streetcar named Desire, then transfer to one called Cemeteries, and get off at Elysian Fields." Blanche is a fading Southern lady who used to teach English. She wears white clothes and acts delicate and refined. She tells Stella that their family home, Belle Rive, has been lost, and that she left her teaching job because of her nerves. Blanche looks down on Stella's small home and lifestyle, feeling her sister has fallen from their wealthy background. Stella is gentle and submissive, while her husband, Stanley Kowalski, is strong, rough, and very physical. Blanche enjoys dim light, baths, and pretty clothes, while Stanley sweats, shouts, and tears off his shirt under bright light. Stella still loves Blanche, but is deeply tied to her husband and the life she has with him. Her pregnancy symbolizes her new life as a Kowalski, not a Dubois. While Blanche is bathing, Stanley searches through her trunk because he believes she sold Belle Rive and kept the money. Blanche explains that the property was lost due to a mortgage and shows him the papers to prove it. Later that night, Stanley and his friends are playing poker when Blanche and Stella return from an outing. Stanley's friend Mitch is drawn to Blanche, and she cleverly flirts with him, adjusting the light to make herself look attractive. She also covers a bright light bulb with a paper lantern to soften the glow. Stanley grows angry that Blanche is disrupting the game. When she turns on the radio, he throws it out the window. When Stella tries to calm him, Stanley hits her. Horrified, Blanche takes Stella upstairs to their neighbor Eunice's apartment. Stanley's friends cool him down with a shower, and he regrets what he did. Then, calling out, "Stella!" in the street, Stanley begs her to come back. Stella eventually returns to him, leaving Blanche in shock as Mitch stays behind to comfort her. The next morning, Stella is calm and glowing, but Blanche is still upset and nervous. Stella admits she's thrilled by Stanley's violent passion, and that even though Blanche wants her to leave, she's not in anything that she has a desire to get out of. Blanche urges Stella to contact Shep Huntley, a rich man from Dallas, to help them escape. Blanche claims the only thing keeping Stella and Stanley together is the rattletrap streetcar named Desire. Without their knowing, Stanley overhears Blanche calling him crude and subhuman. Blanche warns Stella, "In this dark march towards whatever it is we're approaching, don't hang back with the brutes." Later, Stanley hints that he knows unpleasant things about Blanche's past, making her uneasy. One day, while Blanche is waiting for Mitch to take her out, a young man comes by to collect for the newspaper. Blanche flirts with him and even kisses him before Mitch arrives. After their date, Blanche is exhausted with the utter exhaustion which only a neurasthenic personality can know. She continues pretending to be an innocent Southern lady who blushes at a kiss, while Mitch proudly talks about his physical strength instead of showing it off. Blanche tearfully tells Mitch about her first love. When she was 16, she married a gentle young man who turned out to be gay. One night, after she scolding him while they were dancing the Varsuviana polka, he killed himself. Ever since, Blanche has been haunted by that memory, and the sound of the polka often echoes throughout the play. About a month later, on Blanche's birthday, she is bathing while Stella prepares dinner. Stanley tells Stella the truth about Blanche's scandalous past as Blanche sings from the bathroom, "Paper Moon, it's a Barnum and Bailey world, just as phony as it can be, but it wouldn't be make-believe if you believed in me." After losing Belle Reve, Blanche stayed at the cheap Hotel Flamingo until she was kicked out for her affairs with men. She wasn't on a break from her teaching job, she was fired for having an affair with a 17-year-old student. Stella is horrified, especially when Stanley says he's told Mitch everything. Then Stanley tells Stella he's bought Blanche a one-way bus ticket back to Mississippi. Mitch never shows up for Blanche's birthday dinner. Blanche senses something is wrong and tries to call him, but no one answers. Stanley gives Blanche the bus ticket. The soft sound of the polka plays as Blanche runs from the room. Stanley and Stella argue fiercely, but their fight stops when Stella suddenly goes into labor. That night, Blanche is alone, drunk, and hearing the Varsuviana in her head. Mitch, also drunk, arrives and confronts her. Blanche admits Stanley's stories are true, that after her husband's death, she found comfort in the arms of strangers. A Mexican woman passes by, calling out, "Flores para los muertos," flowers for the dead. Mitch tries to force himself on Blanche without wanting to marry her, but stops halfway. Blanche screams, "Fire, fire," and he leaves in shame. A few hours later, that same night, Blanche is still drinking heavily after Mitch has left. Stanley comes home from the hospital to rest before Stella gives birth. Blanche is dressed up ridiculously in a white evening gown and a rhinestone tiara. She lies, claiming that Shep Huntley has sent her a telegram from Dallas and that Mitch came back on his knees with roses to beg her forgiveness. Stanley mocks her fantasy. "You come in here and sprinkle the place with powder and spray perfume and cover the light bulb with a paper lantern, and lo and behold, the place is turned into Egypt, and you are the queen of the Nile, sitting on your throne and swilling down my liquor. I say, ha, ha." Wearing his shiny silk pajamas, Stanley comes toward her. Blanche tries to resist, but he overpowers her, saying, "Tiger, tiger, drop the bottle top, drop it. We've had this date with each other from the beginning." He carries her to the bed, and the music swells, showing that he rapes her offstage. Weeks later, Stella and their neighbor Eunice pack Blanche's things while the men play poker in the kitchen and Blanche bathes. They've arranged for Blanche to be taken to a mental asylum, though Blanche believes Shep Huntley is coming to rescue her. Blanche has told Stella about the rape, but Stella refuses to believe it. When Blanche comes out of the bath, she acts confused and dreamy, worrying about the cleanliness of the grapes and talking about drowning in the sea. A doctor and a matron arrive from the asylum. Blanche walks past the poker players toward the door, still thinking Shep has come for her. When she realizes the truth, she panics and tries to hide, but the matron catches her. Stanley tears the paper lantern off the light bulb, exposing the harsh light. The matron drags Blanche out, but the doctor speaks to her kindly, calming her down. Blanche holds on to her last bit of grace, saying, "Whoever you are, I have always depended on the kindness of strangers." The doctor gently leads her away. Stella, holding her baby, begins to cry deeply while Stanley tries to comfort her. Blanche Dubois, character analysis. Blanche Dubois, about 30 years old, is Stella's older sister and a former high school English teacher from Laurel, Mississippi. She's nervous and fragile, as though any small shock could break her. When she was young, she married a man she later discovered was homosexual. He killed himself soon after. By the time Blanche arrives in New Orleans, her life is in ruins. She's lost the family estate, Belle Reve, because of unpaid debts and has become known for her affairs with men and her drinking. Still, she clings to her fading image as a refined Southern belle. As Williams writes, Her delicate beauty must avoid a strong light. There is something about her uncertain manner, as well as her white clothes, that suggests a moth. Blanche truly loves her sister and wants Stella to leave Stanley and start a better life. Yet she's both disgusted by and strangely drawn to Stanley's raw strength, helplessly attracted to him like a moth to the flame. Stanley Kowalski, Stella's husband. Stanley is full of raw strength, aggression, and masculine energy. He wears bright, flashy clothes, often rips off his sweaty shirts and breaks things around the house. His rough, physical nature contrasts sharply with Blanche's late husband, who was gentle and homosexual. Stanley truly loves Stella, who is soft and feminine, the opposite of his violent personality. As Blanche mockingly says, their connection is subhuman, based mainly on physical desire. Still, their passion binds them deeply. Stanley also feels a dark attraction to Blanche, and in the play's climax, he rapes her while Stella is in the hospital giving birth. Stella. Stella is Blanche's younger sister and Stanley's wife. She is the emotional center of the play, calm, loving, and patient. She balances Blanche's nervous energy and Stanley's violent nature. Stella loves Blanche and feels for her pain, but she doesn't want to return to her old life. She's chosen her present life in New Orleans with Stanley. Her pregnancy shows her commitment to her future as a Kowalski, not as a Dubois. Stanley dominates her with his strong physical presence, and though Stella suffers from his violence, she stays with him. By modern standards, she's a victim of domestic abuse, but in the play, her decision to stay is shown as complex, neither clearly right nor wrong. Harold Mitchell, Mitch. Mitch is one of Stanley's poker friends and is more polite and gentle than the others. He still has physical desires, but behaves with more manners and kindness. He and Blanche begin a relationship, but Blanche hides the truth about her past, pretending to be innocent and pure. When Mitch learns about her history, he feels betrayed and leaves her. The Streetcar. Williams called the streetcar the ideal metaphor for the human condition. It's both real and symbolic. The title, A Streetcar Named Desire, refers to an actual streetcar line in New Orleans, but also represents the force of desire that drives human behavior. Blanche's route, taking desire, then cemeteries to Elysian fields, symbolizes her life's journey. Desire leads to death and finally to illusion or escape. Once desire takes hold, the characters can't resist it. They're carried helplessly to its end. The Varsoviana Polka. The Varsoviana polka reminds Blanche of her young husband's suicide. They were dancing to the polka when she cruelly confronted him about his homosexuality, after which he ran outside and shot himself. The music returns whenever Blanche is haunted by memories of him or her past. It continues in her mind until something in the present, or the imagined sound of a gunshot, breaks the spell. Only Blanche hears the music, but the audience hears it too, allowing us to share her growing madness and grief. Bathing. Blanche takes many baths throughout the play to soothe her nerves. Bathing helps her escape from the heat, dirt, and tension of the small apartment. Instead of facing her problems, Blanche retreats into the bath as if she could wash away her past and guilt. Like Lady Macbeth, who tries to wash imaginary blood from her hands in Macbeth, Blanche's washing shows her desperate need for cleansing. She also bathes as if the water were a fountain of youth, trying to feel young again, but no matter how much she bathes, she can't erase her past. In contrast, the men dunk Stanley in the shower not to escape but to sober him up and bring him back to reality. Paper lantern and a paper moon. The paper lantern that Blanche hangs of the light bulb symbolizes her attempt to hide both her past and her aging appearance. The lantern softens the harsh light, helping her maintain the illusion of beauty and innocence. But this illusion is fragile. It can be ripped off at any moment. Mitch puts up the lantern, allowing Blanche to pretend to be a naive Southern belle. But when Stanley tells Mitch the truth about her, Mitch angrily tears the lantern down. Blanche cries, "I don't want realism, I want magic," showing that she prefers fantasy over truth. At the end, Stanley pulls off the lantern again, destroying Blanche's final illusion. The same idea appears in the song Paper Moon, which Blanche sings while Stanley reveals her lies to Stella. It's a Barnum and Bailey world, just as phony as it can be, but it wouldn't be make-believe if you believed in me. Both the lantern and the song represent Blanche's paper world, fake, delicate, and built on illusion and hope. Alcohol and drunkenness. Stanley's body and masculinity are at the center of the play. He is often half-naked, sweating, shouting, and breaking things. He yells for Stella like an animal calling its mate, and he later forces himself on Blanche. He also airs Blanche's dirty laundry, exposing her secrets to prove his dominance as both the alpha male and head of the household. Still, Stanley is not purely brutal. His masculinity shows tenderness at times, especially when Stella is pregnant or goes into labor. He also breaks down when she briefly leaves him after he hits her. Stanley represents raw, aggressive masculinity, powerful but frightening. Mitch, on the other hand, represents a gentler, more comforting form of manhood. If Stanley is the alpha male, Mitch is the beta male, still strong but less dominating. Mitch prides himself on his size, 6'1", 207 pounds, but seeks affection and understanding rather than control. To Blanche, Mitch seems manly yet safe, attractive without being dangerous like Stanley. Femininity and dependence. Blanche and Stella show two different kinds of femininity, but both depend on men for emotional and financial security. Blanche is a fading Southern belle who clings to illusion. She prefers magic and candlelight to truth and daylight. She acts shy and delicate because she believes that's what makes her desirable to men. Even when she urges Stella to leave Stanley, her solution is to depend on another man, Shep Huntley, for rescue. After her failed marriage, Blanche keeps seeking comfort and self-worth through relationships with men who often take advantage of her fragile state. She hopes Mitch will marry her and save her from her past. Although others see Blanche's sexuality as shameful, Stanley sees it as a form of power, the very thing that threatens him. Stella's femininity, unlike Blanche's, is based on acceptance of reality. She doesn't hide who she is. Her pregnancy represents the real, physical nature of her life as a woman. Stella chooses her passionate love for Stanley over Blanche's fantasies, saying she's not in anything that she has a desire to get out of. Even though Stanley abuses her, she decides to stay, believing that love and family matter more. Eunice, their neighbor, shares this practical view and convinces Stella that staying with Stanley and rejecting Blanche's story of rape is the only way to survive. Literary techniques. Illusion. Stanley alludes to Cleopatra, connecting Blanche's manipulative charm and pursuit of luxury with the ancient queen. Foil. Blanche and Stanley serve as foils for each other, representing contrasting ideas of aristocracy and working-class life, as well as illusion and brutal reality. Dramatic irony. The audience often knows more than the characters, such as when they are aware of the truth about Blanche's past, creating tension with the character's ignorance. Imagery. Williams uses vivid descriptions in his stage directions to create powerful sensory experiences, contributing to the play's atmosphere and the character's emotional states. Juxtaposition. The play places contrasting elements together, such as the clash between the old Southern aristocracy, represented by Blanche, and the new working-class culture, represented by the Kowalskis. Number 1. Scene 3, pages 57 through 61. This scene is very crucial in understanding some of the major themes in the novel. The scene starts off with poker night, where Stanley and the guys are all playing, and Stella and Blanche both come out to meet the guys. Later on in the scene, the men are drunk, especially Stanley. Blanche goes to turn on the radio, which then upsets Stanley, and he angrily walks into the bedroom and throws it out the window. Calling him an animal, Stella witnesses this and runs to the poker table and asks everyone to leave and go home. Stanley then goes after Stella, ready to physically and verbally hurt her. Stella wants to leave and is eventually guided upstairs by Blanche. After a moment, Stanley comes and screams for Stella, telling Eunice that he wants to talk to his baby. This is the part in which Eunice says, "You can't beat on a woman and then call her back. She won't come, and her going to have a baby. You stinker." Stella then makes her reappearance back downstairs, even though her eyes are filled with tears. It turns out that she went back downstairs to him, and everything was back to normal. This is a vital scene of the play because it tells us a lot about Stella's character and her weaknesses.
She is easily able to forgive Stanley for such hurtful acts. For her, this aggressive behavior is attractive, and she desires the sexual intimacy they have between each other when the lights go off. But there are things that happen between a man and a woman in the dark that sort of make everything else seem unimportant, is a quote said by Stella to Blanche in Scene 4. The problem with Stella is that she forgets everything Stanley has ever done to her on a daily basis, and that is not the way a healthy relationship should be. Number 2, Scene 11, page 137 to 142. This scene is very important in understanding the outcome of the characters and seeing the consequences for Blanche's actions. This scene represents the very end of the novel, where Stella has arranged for Blanche to be taken away by a doctor to seek help for her mental condition. This scene is crucial in understanding Blanche's and Stella's character. Leading up to this scene, it is very clear that Blanche's mental health has slowly deteriorated from all her suffering and delusions. Her detraction from reality has led to her desperate need for mental care and attention. Her previous actions have led to this consequence. Blanche walks out with the doctor and says, "I have always depended on the kindness of strangers," showing her vulnerability and her blind trust of strangers. We also understand a little more about Stella's character from this scene. We learn that she is a lot like Blanche than we thought. She chooses not to accept the reality that Stanley did in fact rape Blanche. Instead, she is clouded by her own illusions and her blind love for Stanley and decides to stay with him despite his actions. Stella sends Blanche away so she can get the help she needs, but also so she can go back to the normal life she and Stanley had before. She quickly regrets her decision when she says, "What have I done to my sister? Oh God, what have I done to my sister?" but is assured by Eunice that she made the right decision. Both of their characters, Stella and Blanche, choose to disregard the reality, which is the truth, and are forced to face the consequences. This scene tells us a lot about Blanche's need for mental care, as well as Stella's need for Stanley. Depiction of the scene. Eunice opens the door to see who it is. A man and a woman, a doctor, are waiting at the door for Blanche. Blanche rushes into her bedroom and the matron grabs a hold of her. Blanche tells the doctor to ask her to let go of me. Page 141. Blanche walks to the door and passes the guys playing poker in the kitchen. She once again says, "Please don't get up. I'm only passing through." Page 138. Blanche seeks comfort in the doctor and walks out with him. Holding onto his hands, she says, "Whoever you are, I have always depended on the kindness of strangers." Page 142. Blanche appears at the door and sees the doctor standing there. "You are not the gentleman I was expecting." Blanche. Page 138. Stanley is trying to comfort Stella after Blanche leaves. "Now, honey, now, love, now love." Page 142. 3. Scene 6, pages 95-96. In this scene, Blanche described her tragic previous marriage to her new potential lover, Mitch. Blanche got married at a very young age. The boy she was so desperately in love with was different than all the others. She couldn't figure it out, but she felt something tormentingly mysterious about him. It wasn't until she accidentally found her husband with another man that she realized he was gay. They had decided to forget anything happened. One night, however, they went to a casino and got drunk. All the pent-up anger Blanche held against her husband was released. This caused him to kill himself. This event was crucial in understanding the character of Blanche Dubois. She had experienced a traumatic event. As a result, she felt lonely and self-conscious. Occasionally, she would hear the faint polka song that played when the gunshot sounded on the night of her late husband's death. All of these factors led to a downward spiral that caused alcohol, sex, and lies to take over Blanche's life. Depiction of scene. Blanche is comforted by Mitch after she reveals her tragic past to her new potential lover. Then, with a soft cry, huddles in his embrace. She makes a sobbing effort to speak, but the word won't come. Page 96. 4. Scene 9, pages 113 to 116. When Mitch does not arrive to Blanche's birthday party, she is in a lot of tension and patiently waits for his arrival and/or call. The haunting polka music plays in her head until he finally comes along in ragged clothes and a sour mood. She is baffled, but he continues to be cold and plops himself down on the couch while throwing his foot over her bed. The music starts playing again, which is significant because the frightening aspect of her love life came back to greet her. Her dishonesty would soon be evident as he presses the questions of why the room is so dark. He further explains that he never took a good look at her and questions why he only happened to be around in her in dim lighting at a certain time. Mitch says that he doesn't mind her age but was offended by her lies and attempt to show that she was morally upright. He blows her cover entirely by telling her what he knows, and she breaks down into convulsive sobs. This time, however, he doesn't comfort her. He tears the paper lantern off the lighting to see her true face. This was the major turning point of the play that established the fact that both Blanche and Mitch would never be the same towards each other ever again. Scene 10, pages 122 to 130. A few hours after Mitch leaves, Blanche starts to drink. She has her suitcase open in the middle of her bedroom with dresses thrown on top. Blanche starts to dress herself up in a wrinkly white satin gown and slippers. She places a tiara on her head and stands at her dresser talking as though she had a group of admirers in front of her. Eventually, Stanley, who is also drunk, appears after the doctors told him that his baby won't come until morning. Stanley asks why Blanche is dressed up, and she says it's because an admirer named Shep Huntley has invited her on a cruise to the Caribbean. Stanley begins to take off his shirt, and Blanche says to put up the curtain, but he claims he is stopping there. Stanley pours beer over his head and says they should celebrate. Blanche declines, but Stanley continues to drink and changes into the pajamas he wore on his wedding night. Blanche calls Shep a swine, and Stanley's good mood suddenly goes away. Blanche talks of how Mitch came that night with roses begging for forgiveness, but Stanley quickly catches on to her lies. Blanche rushes to call Shep Huntley. Stanley emerges and she is taken aback. He stands between Blanche and the door, and she tells him to back away. Blanche smashes a bottle, and as he goes toward her, she tries to hit him with the broken top, but he grabs her wrist, and she drops the bottle and falls to her knees, and he carries her to the bed. This is an extremely significant scene because it opens with Blanche drinking to escape her depressing reality. While Stanley's drunkenness makes him stronger, Blanche's drunkenness causes her to be more vulnerable and weak. The scene ends with a suspense as Stanley moves toward Blanche and she threatens him. In the end, we can assume that Stanley has raped Blanche.